Hey everybody, hey, welcome back to the 53206 cast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Meg.
And this is a podcast specifically designed to help us engage in the process of rethinking our inner city spaces. Meg.
Yeah.
I listened to this great podcast last week, or this past week.
Yeah.
With it was like a woman.
Okay.
She's in her 40s.
Okay.
Lives in Milwaukee.
Oh.
And talked about all these great things going on in a specific neighborhood.
Okay.
And I learned a lot, and it was great.
Really? Would you know the podcast name?
I was hoping that you could remind me of the name of the podcast that you were on.
Well, to be honest, it's one of our plugs today. It is the Cream City Dreams podcast, and I was on it last week. But like,
you did great.
Well, and I think like the cool thing about it was just like she has interviewed. Her name's Megan, and she's interviewed just a ton of really cool people, like really great people who work with nonprofits. So I feel like as I was prepping for it and I was listening to podcasts, I was excited to hear about so many wonderful people doing so many wonderful things in Milwaukee. So if you're in Milwaukee, if you're not in Milwaukee, I do highly recommend listening to Cream City Dreams because it's a great podcast. She does a great job.
Yeah, if you like the good parts of this podcast, you, Meg.
Oh, that was nice.
You'll really enjoy that one. Meg, today.
Yeah.
You've been in a flurry.
I have been in a flurry this last week, yes.
Telling me about all these things that we're going to talk about on the podcast.
I printed out things. I feel like I did investigation today. And I think it comes back to why we have this podcast.
Okay.
We have this podcast for people to gain a glimpse of what people go through in 53206.
Sure.
Good, bad, wonderful people. But I feel like this, kind of reflecting back on this experience that I'm going to go over this last year, it's just it's infuriating. Oh. And so we're going to rewind to about a year ago from about now. And so I had a neighbor who was talking to me, and she was just saying hey, I've just noticed the streetlights are out a lot lately. And so I was kind of like, okay, I haven't really noticed, but she works third shift. So coming and going, especially this time of the year, it's dark. It's real dark.
It's really not the type of thing you notice until you really wish that they were on.
Yes.
And they're off. Yeah.
Yes. And you notice, wow, it is really dark out.
Yeah.
And so, I just kind of started asking around, my friends in different parts of the city, are your guys' streetlights off often? And, just kind of thinking it through and realizing, wow, our streetlights really are off a lot. They're off a lot. Mm-hmm. And so, kind of around the same time, one of our friends, Ashley Harrell, down the street, she was also kind of investigating this. And she is she's a really good organizer. She's really good at all this kind of stuff. So she was in the midst of setting up community meetings around this whole thing. And so I didn't realize this has actually been a problem. Get out my piece of paper. Fox News covered this in 2021.
Okay.
So since 2021, the streetlights in different parts of the city, haven't been working continuously. So they kind of explained it to me that the streetlights are old Christmas lights.
Sure.
One of them goes out, and then the rest of all those go out. And so they fix one part, and then it's three down is also is
Sure.
out. And so they said
there's some kind of junction box.
Yes.
The lights junction from one to another.
Thank you.
The flow is stopped in one, and then everything down the line.
I appreciate you knowing how electricity works.
Yeah.
It's great. So this has been going on for a while. And so February 21st was our first community meeting just to talk about it. And so, I went, a few of the neighbors went, Ashley from down the street went, and, we just kind of talked about okay, what's going on and what can we do? And so we got a few dates on the calendar. One of them was to meet with the alderwoman. And then eventually in June, we ended up meeting with the department of works, the head of Department of Works and the city engineer. And so kind of just fast forward to that June meeting, we got some answers, yes, they're working on it. They have been, and they're going to have something in place. And I believe he said come September, you'll have a new junction box and they'll be able to dig underneath. And, it will be fixed. So I remember during those meetings though, so there were meetings like throughout last spring, and I just remember like how a lot of the neighbors were just very jaded, and they just kept saying like nothing's gonna happen, nothing good ever happens to our neighborhood. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like what have they seen that I haven't seen? Okay, fast forward to now, and I'm like, I'm on their side, because last week me and Dex are driving down Ring Street, and I think we were going to Ava's soccer game. Yeah, I think it was Sunday night, so a week ago, and I pulled over, and I'm just like, it is so dark here. We pulled over, I turned off the lights in the car, and I'm like, I can't believe how dark it is. And so on Ring Street, there's not a lot of houses that are very well taken care of. So there's not a lot of porch lights. There's not, so that like houses don't have, the porch lights aren't on, basically. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in our neighborhood, there's not a lot of porch lights. That was actually one of the things that at those community meetings we said, like, hey, can we just all like increase our porch lights? Like always have our porch lights on, and like that'll at least help.
Sure.
But if you don't have a porch light,
you
can't do that. And so Ring Street, like there's I feel like the houses on Ring Street are they're not the best kept. They're not kept up the best.
Yeah.
And so
some of them are vacant.
Yes.
Vacant houses aren't going to have their porch lights on.
Yeah. And so as I was just sitting there, and it was just so dark, and me and Dex are like, this is insane. Like, how is it so dark? In the we were right by We Got This garden on 12th and Ring, and right across the street from that, a few of the We Got This kids live there, and two of them specifically I know both have jobs and take the bus, and so they walk those 4 blocks from the bus stop in the darkness.
Sure.
And so I'm just sitting there thinking like, how, like, this is such a safety concern, and like, how is this okay? And how frustrating is this? So I thought, I need to do something. Okay, what can I do? And so I called the guy who was at the June 11th meeting, the head of the electrical whatever in Milwaukee. I called him and I asked him like, hey, wasn't this supposed to be fixed? Like, didn't we talk about like how in September or October, like everything was going to be fixed? And he kind of just shifted the blame. He said how We Energies couldn't decide on where the box was going to go, and how this and this and this, was going wrong on the project. And I kind of told him like the situation, like, hey, this is not okay. This is not acceptable. Like, what are we doing about this? And he really didn't have an answer. He was like, well, we finally got a resolution with We Energies, but all you can do is you can call this in. We don't know, the streetlights were out for 5 days because no one called in. And so I kind of said to him like, so it's the residents' responsibility to let you know that things are broken? And he was like, yeah. And that's what I really wanted to talk about on this podcast. Like, how is it that it's the residents' responsibility, like, to keep the city, to keep the city accountable? And like that just seems really backwards. And so like I was thinking about like, well, what other ways in our neighborhood are like that? Like, let's just consider, okay, same spot, 12th and Ring. Someone dumped like 20 tires there the other day. Whose responsibility is it to get those tires off that vacant property? It's the residents to call it in. And, it's just like, it is not fair that this just is and again, I don't know a better way. I don't know a better system, but why is it the residents' responsibility to keep people accountable?
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of a unrelated, but kind of like similar. I think the mentality that you're going for, like we had an issue with one of the furnaces at one of the rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happens. It's cold. You don't. The first time one is acting up, you don't immediately go out and buy a new one, because you'll be doing that way more often than you need to. But when you're troubleshooting a furnace, you're tweaking something, fixing something, and then you're hoping that that part is the solution that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it would be in that case the tenant's responsibility to let the landlord know, hey, my heat's not working, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there gets a point where, okay, it's happened a couple of times. I go over there and fix it, get it to work again. Where one, I either then need to start seriously reconsidering or considering buying a new furnace, or two, I need to be checking, in the morning when I leave and at night when I come home that it's running like it's supposed to. Like I need to be going and doing some of these additional checks. It's not like, it isn't like there wouldn't be a city employee that, isn't on the job at 5:30 or 5 o'clock and when it's dark out to see the streetlights aren't on. Similarly, like, I know that there are city inspectors that drive around and can easily call something in terms of somebody dumping just as much as I can. I think with the responsibility being shifted onto the residents, I can think of a lot of other places where residents have a lot of space in their life to deal with.
Yeah, a lot more margin
and can deal with, okay, I need to call this one thing in. But I got to tell you, I probably called in dumped trash 50 or 75 times in my life. Yeah. And it gets really old.
It does.
Calling it in over and over and over again.
Yeah. And that's what I told the electrical guy. I was like, to be honest, like, we're all sick of calling this in. Like, at some point, like, you need to just fix this stuff. Like, when are you going to fix it? And he still didn't have a response for me.
Well, yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I always thought an interesting idea would be, in terms of the dumping or even the streetlights, there's lots of people who just drive like adjacent to our neighborhood on the highway. Yeah. It'd be great to have like a little army of people that pull off and call this stuff in.
Yeah.
But the idea that, then it's, nobody moves into a neighborhood expecting it to be their responsibility to keep other parts of the neighborhood clean. And, I wouldn't say it's insulting, but it's like, it isn't something that you think that, okay, I bought my house, I keep my house clean, but now it is my responsibility to keep the rest of the area clean. You and I think a little bit differently maybe than, a typical neighbor would think, but because, we want to be able to take a little bit of that responsibility. But, if you were to stop everything that you're doing every single time you see the streetlights out, I mean, you would be doing that. Yeah. 4 days a week.
Well, and kind of like you said, like, it just doesn't seem fair to place the burden on individuals who are already facing, the significant challenges like cycle of poverty, the standard of their housing and like limited access to quality education, while also holding them responsible for keeping their streetlights on.
Sure. Yeah, because there's definitely a lot of other places where first off, the infrastructure would be better. Yeah. But then, there are a lot of other places that exist where it isn't even something that you would think about. Yeah. It isn't even something that you would think like, oh, I have to be the one responsible for making sure that this thing that was supposed to be provided for me is provided for me, or that I point this other person in this direction that, in order for this basic, semi-basic, not need, but semi-basic level of care for the neighborhood exists.
Well, and I think it's just like another way that shows the people who live here. And like, I feel like this might not sound great, but like, it shows people that live here that like the city doesn't really care. And I don't know, like, that's not on purpose. Like, the city is not saying I don't care about you, but it just shows a level of, I'm not going to do anything to fix this. I'm not going to prioritize this, that the residents have seen. This has been since 2001 that the streetlights have. Thank you. I said that earlier today, and I'm like, oh, Alex, I'm so glad you're on this podcast with me, because I would go around saying that, and I would be incorrect. This has been going on since then, and it still isn't fixed. And again, I feel like there's so many ways that people who live here just feel like their voice isn't as powerful as other people's in the city, and that's not right.
Yeah. And I think even, when you're thinking about some of the services that are provided, I mean, I think the police do a fine job. I have no issue with policing in our neighborhood. But, that would be another thing that would fall on, it would be, how many times have you called something in to the police? And, it doesn't, the responsibility, falls back on you or the person, reporting the thing, okay, that this thing is happening, or you're the one that's responsible for videotaping this thing happening, which I understand, like, 'cause you need the evidence and things, but, in order to keep a base level status quo for the neighborhood, it requires work from the residents. Yeah. Where I don't think that's the case. Yeah. I don't think that's the case in other places.
Mm-hmm. And I think it goes back to like the levels of margin, and people who are living here don't have as much of a margin as other parts of the city. And it just seems very unfair that they have to take on so much burden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think this goes into a little bit that like a clean neighborhood is a safer neighborhood. And, when we talk about dumping and all that, like, so when we're talking about different levels of responsibility, I walked through the alley yesterday, and there's at least 3 houses that I don't know if they're city owned or like there's the Burntown house. Mm-hmm. Then next to that, there's Tiffany's house, which that one, I think somebody owns that, but
I think so.
They don't do anything with it. And then next
to
that,
sitting there, yep.
Then next to that is another one that like no one does anything with. Like the grass was like 4 feet high all summer.
The one with the hole in the roof?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there one next to that, or is then there Dawn's garden?
Then the garden.
Okay, so there's those 3 that like they just have the whole backyard is all dumped on, and I know at least one of them is city owned because the burnt down one is city owned. And that one, their whole garage is full of people went and dumped stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And like, as I was just sitting there, and I was like, I was at the 9th Street Garden. I was like cleaning up trash, and like all the trash was like blowing into the garden. And I just thought like the residents here, like they have to clean up. They have to clean up like their yards from all this trash that is just dumped. And, like, who dumped that? I feel like just the levels of responsibility. Like, somebody's coming here, they're dumping all their stuff here. And then, like, I just cleaned up out front yesterday, and I come in here, and there's more trash.
Yeah.
It's just so much trash.
Sure.
So I think when we're thinking about, like, a safe neighborhood is a clean neighborhood, and that a clean neighborhood is a luxury, that's something that 53206 doesn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't know what we do about it. But.
And I feel like there aren't any answers here. I think, again, a part of this podcast is to like get a glimpse as to how things are here and how sometimes it's hard, and how, empathy and helping clean up the neighborhood is always needed. Yeah,
that's true. Meg.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
I would. Super exciting. The BP gas station over on 8th and Atkinson is now open. And it had changed hands, and it is black owned, and it is one of the only black owned gas stations in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I just find it shocking that it would be the only black owned gas station in the state of Wisconsin. But I have heard that that's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is just insane to me.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by that.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's a couple that bought it, so it's not like a big company, and I don't know how that all works. But
yeah, I do wonder how much a gas station costs.
You would like to know that, yeah. But they are, it's a new store.
Sure.
They need some support. Basically, is what I'm saying. So if you're in the area, and even if you're not, come over here, check to see if the lights are on. Call them in if they're not.
If they're not,
call the city.
Grab a trash picker, pick up one bag of trash, take it with you.
Yeah. But I have gone to the BP gas station on 8th and Atkinson, and it's always a great, like, I feel like it's always a wonderful I feel like out of gas stations, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, my first friends in the neighborhood was a guy named Archie that worked at the gas station. I don't know if he still works there.
Wasn't he the first person you told that I was pregnant with May?
Yep.
Yeah. What, 15 years ago?
He was very excited.
Oh, he's great. So I would just say my plug is to support the BP on 8th and Atkinson.
Yeah, because you go and get gas. You can go get gas anywhere.
Yeah.
And I know you probably don't make a ton of money off of gas if you're a gas station. Again, I'd love to know the inner workings of a gas station. Mm-hmm. But if you stop by, you support them. That's never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Meg.
Yeah.
I probably should plug the book.
Yeah.
So the book Bad Neighborhoods, the audio version is 100% done. We'll just call it that.
Yeah.
And it's available just like this podcast is on a podcast feed. The podcast feed is called Bad Neighborhoods, which is the title of the book. Meg, it's kind of cool. I was sick for a week, so I didn't get up early and work on it.
You were down and out. You were like down and out. You have not been that sick
it got me good.
I want to say you haven't been that sick since you had COVID, like before COVID was a thing.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
You were very sick that time, but we didn't know that COVID was a thing. But I think you had COVID.
Anyways, but it's kind of cool because I now am working on putting together like a physical copy of it.
Nice, yeah.
And, you gotta, when you go to give it to them, like it has to, you gotta have like everything to fit on a page.
Sure.
Because you write it in like a Google Doc, I did at least. Yeah. And I don't know how long the Google Doc is, 100 and something pages long probably. Yeah. So then you have to like use this formatter thing. It's cool. It's kind of cool. Yeah. So,
that is
I don't know when that'll be finished because I just don't know how long it takes to do that. But that's in the works for this week. So, but the audio version, if you can listen to a podcast, you can access the book for free on the Bad Neighborhoods podcast feed. And thanks to everybody who's already checked it out. Had a good number of downloads for the first couple of weeks it's been out. So appreciate that. And like I said, if you're interested, if you like this content, it's all pretty similar. Pretty not the same,
but like same guy talking.
True, it is. It is the same guy. So I read the whole thing, which Meg is kind of crazy. To read an entire book out loud into a microphone. It's it took a while.
Yeah. I feel like in like 2 years, AI will just be able to do it for you.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that's my guess.
In my voice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, I should get on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just heard some podcasters say that they have their podcast out in Spanish, and it's like their voices in Spanish.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I'm like, that's crazy. Yeah.
Should I do it in Spanish?
You should definitely do it in Spanish, yes.
Maybe I will. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.